Hey, everybody, welcome to The Family Business, where we're bringing you another episode about how family intertwines with your career. I'm happy to introduce Dan Rose and his wife, Marta. I've known Dan for quite some time, and he is one of the more accomplished medical device executives that I know, but he's also one of the more accomplished family men that I know. So, guys, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's believe it's mine. Dan, could you take a quick minute to just give a quick insight of who you are and what you're doing at the moment, just so people have a general context of who you are?
Sure. Currently, I'm CEO of Lymphlo, which is a startup focused on kind of end-stage chronic limb-threatening ischemia. So we're in the peripheral space, largely within the cardiovascular space, and we're funded by. We're one of the Sopi-Nova companies, and they led our last round, and we are in the midst of running a pretty substantial pivotal trial in the United States to gain approval and introduce the product globally. The company is based in Paris, but I live in Switzerland, so we're dialing in from there, and so that's part of, I think, the story about family life and medtech. Is most of my jobs have required a tremendous amount of travel. So.
Yeah, I've known and followed Dan's company for quite some time, and it's the epitome of making a difference for a patient to save someone from amputation. And so it's an amazing technology for those of you who want to research it after. Marta, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to get just 1 minute. I'm not even sure of your background. I've never had a chance to speak with you. So if you can just give me an idea of where you're from and some of the things that you've done before this guy came into your life.
Okay. So I grew up in Switzerland. I'm from Croatian parents. I studied law here. I have a master in law. I went back to Croatia afterwards. I worked for a few years in startups, and then I got my MBA in the UK and worked for a while in London. We lived in London for a while, and then we came to Switzerland and had a family, traveled around for dance work, and we're back here.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've seen many pictures of your vacations and some of the outdoor X game type activities that happen in your family, and I'd love to start there. Either of you can answer. So where did that all come from, the rock climbing and the outdoorship? Because I've traveled throughout Europe, but I've never spent any time in Switzerland. So is it that, or was it prior to that you guys were always doing these types of activities?
I think Marta and I both have always loved to travel, so that's one of the things that's been important to us before we had a family, and then now, with the family, we do have three kids. Max is 15, Ella is 13, and Taya is 10. And so it's always been part of our rhythm, I think, and so it's part of my life as well to be traveling a lot and basically come home with my work bag and drop it and leave with the bag to go away with the kids, either for the weekend or when we do have longer holidays. So we're always kind of moving, I think. And then Switzerland is an incredible place to live, and we have the mountains, we have the lake, so and we're just trying to take advantage of what's in front of us, I think, is the main thing. So it's always been kind of part. Marta and I used to go hiking in the mountains a lot before the kids came, and then we just kind of kept it up. There was a period where it was quite difficult because the kids were small and things are steep, so that doesn't necessarily add up to an easy weekend, but now they can go and go, and I spend a lot of time rock climbing and in the mountains with all the kids, in fact, and Marta is taking a lot of photographs as well, and we're doing a lot of sailing because we have a lake right in front of us. So it's a matter of taking advantage of. I guess if we lived in San Diego, we'd be surfing, but here we're up on the rocks in the high altitudes. So.
That's amazing. And so, from a parent standpoint and safety, like when do you get comfortable with your kids climbing outdoors like that? Indoors, I'm sure it's fairly safe where they're tethered up, but from an outdoor standpoint, Marta, I don't know if you're just staring like this as you're watching them climb, or how does that go?
We We do. They are trained, so they know their checks, their safety checks to do before they get on. They basically, we haven't just let them loose. We took training, we took classes, all of us, safety classes to understand what are the safety checks to do before you climb. If Dan does some more serious alpine climbing with one of the kids, then they have a guide with them. So no, we do take safety very seriously. So I grew up here, so I understand how dangerous the mountains can be. So we take it seriously, and the kids know how to do it in a safe way.
That's interesting because I was thinking about this, about the cross-cultural development of the kids. I mean, Dan obviously grew up here and you grew up there, and so they're a bit of a mix. Do you think that they tend to pick up any of the culture from the U.S. because of Dan, or because they're living in Switzerland, they're more European in their approach?
Well, this came up recently because I just asked them, like, what do you consider yourself? Because they each have 3 passports, and they and obviously a cultural relationship with all 3. Croatia from Marta's family, and of course growing up here, and then American culture is pervasive. I mean, a lot of the music and internet and stuff and media they consume is from the U.S. and obviously I'm American. But I asked them, and they all 3 of them basically said we're American or Croatian. We're not Swiss. And okay. I was a bit shocked by that, but because that this is more where they were born. Well, 2 were born here, so 1 was born in Sweden, but
they all grew up and went to school here, so they basically have always been immersed in the Swiss culture.
And they're in local school, for example. I mean, they're not in private school or anything. They go to public school, so in French. So they're Swiss. I mean, as you could make them, I guess. But
So what languages do you speak in the house?
When they were small, I used to speak Croatian to them. So they used to be fluent in Croatian, French, and English. As they're growing up and it becomes more complicated to speak a language that Dan doesn't speak, he unfortunately doesn't speak Croatian fluently. So I switched to English. So it's English in the house, and it's French at school, and it's Croatian with the family when we go down to Croatia.
But there's a lot of franglais, as we call it. There's a lot of French-English mix in the house, just because the kids are lazy and will switch
well, knowing Dan as long as I have, I'm sure they know the bad words in most of the languages as well. Correct.
Most of my Croatian vocabulary is bad words, in fact. So
I figured as much. You got the important stuff first.
Critical items. Yeah.
The career decisions that you both have made, how much of them would you say, and it's always tough because it changes probably every year, how much of it is family-based, the decisions you've made on which job you've turned down, which job you've taken, or which place you've moved to, versus it was career-motivated and the family was faded to the back?
I think it's always been a key part of the decision-making we've made. I mean, you have to look at jobs holistically and career progression holistically. I mean, we came to Switzerland because we both, are kind of both our jobs in the UK came to an end at the same time. So we said, let's try and do something different. So I agreed to hop here. I very quickly went to work for Medtronic, and we very quickly had our first child. And then Medtronic came with an offer to go to Sweden. And in fact, it was Pat Mackin, who's now the CEO of CryoLab, who offered me that job. And he wanted an answer kind of immediately, because that's a bit the way Pat is. And I asked at least if we could visit Sweden, because I'd never visited Sweden, and with Marta. And so we went up there, and it happened to be midsummer, which is a better time to visit Sweden than midwinter.
I think so.
And so we decided to move up there for 3 months, and I ran Nordic Vascular for 3 years. Sorry, and I ran Nordic Vascular for Medtronic. So that was probably the biggest time we've said, okay, this is a complete new adventure, right? We're going to a country where neither of us speaks the language, never really been there, and so, but I think Marta, you were certainly up for it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, every time the family has been a big consideration in every job Dan has taken. But, we discussed it and it seemed like the right time. Sweden we just had Max. Max was 9 months old and sort of was something new, something different to try. And we knew it was not going to be forever. We knew there was a 2 to 3 year, timeline on it. Had he told me we're moving to Sweden forever, might have been a different discussion. But that was.
Yeah, it's funny because I was just about to ask. Understanding that it's temporary certainly makes things much easier to accept because there's a finish line at some point.
And then the other aspect I would just say is that for all the jobs since then, I came back to Switzerland and worked for Medtronic and then left to join a couple startups and LimFlow, is that we have decided to remain here. Mm-hmm. And all of those jobs were not here. I mean, one was in Zurich, one was effectively being in Germany all the time or probably 80% of the time. And, LimFlow's in Paris. So we have maintained the family here because we did want stability for the kids and to have a base for them, perhaps to have a cultural base for them, but that didn't seem to work. But at least to have, a grounding spot. And, but that has had the downside of me traveling, oftentimes 3 or 4 days a week,
right?
Or 50 weeks a year. So, I think in a med tech life, like I've had, there have been sacrifices, major sacrifices, but part of that has been, trying to stay here rather than move the kids around all the time and settle in new places, which would have been, I think, much more complicated ultimately.
So I've always wanted to ask this, and Marta, this is why I'm glad you're here. What's it like when Dan's not in the house? Is it easier? Is it harder? Does Max step up and start acting like he's Dan? Like, what happens?
No, it's actually, it's evolved over the years. When the kids were small, it was definitely tough. Being alone with them, all 3 of them, trying to, get everything done and get them to wherever they needed to get. And, Switzerland has a school system that requires them to be home over lunchtime. So that's another quite complicated, organizational hurdle because sometimes they're in 3 different schools. So, you have to pick them up, you have to make lunch, so it's quite busy. And I think when they were small, it was a lot more physically demanding. Now it's a lot more maybe emotionally demanding to be alone with them because they're teenagers and they do push the boundaries all the time. And, being the only one there to stand up and say, no, is sometimes difficult, but they're pretty good kids. I have to say they're not difficult. They're quite good.
Yeah. My wife used to travel quite a bit. And she'd be gone sometimes 10 days to 2 weeks. And so the only thing good about that was there was only one opinion. It was mine. Right or wrong, it was just mine. And so when she would come home, she would call it burning up on re-entry. Because at first she'd come in and I'd be like, you have to stop telling me what to do and making decisions. And she's like, but I live here and I'm their mother. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that you're part of this equation. And so I don't know, does that happen with Dan where when he first comes home, you guys have to readjust each time?
No, we actually are pretty lucky that way. We're both on the same page on a lot of things. And sometimes when I get tired of the kids nagging me, I'll just ask your dad. But normally Dan gets back to me and says, hey, what did you say to them before he goes off? So that we are always on the same, or mostly on the same page.
I think having some degree of coherence is important in the parenting style. And I do make an effort when I'm here to to kind of pick up some of the slack, and it's one of the joys of working virtually. I think COVID in some ways has not been a huge change because I've always, for the past, I guess 10 years or so, had some kind of virtual working circumstance. So, and that does mean that you can step in and pick kids up sometimes and organize your calendar a little bit to make it more flexible and supportive. But yeah, it's I often feel like Marta's a single parent when I'm away. She's definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I do function like that because he's never home the same days. It's not like he's every Monday home and then every Friday home or whatever. So I organize the week, not counting on him. If he's around and can help out, great. But I do organize my my schedule around what needs to be done with the kids, counting that I'll be along to take care of it.
Yeah, I mean, with 3 kids, it must be so difficult to keep track of all their personal calendars and their activities you want to get to. I don't know if they play sports or what they do from an extracurricular standpoint, but Dan, I'm sure you're always on the run trying to make sure you're at everything or at least to get some video of all of it. Has there ever been anything like that where you're running through airports to make somebody's recital?
Not really. You gave us this question beforehand, and we were talking about it, and not really. I think we have an ethos in the house that's been something naturally between Marta and I from the very beginning, which is that we, I mean, for the kids, we made more of an effort around birthdays and events, but it's still pretty chill in the sense that they know I'll be there if I can be there, and if I'm not there, that certainly happens. I mean, I probably miss 1 out of 3 birthdays for the kids a year.
Yeah,
I mean, if they'd select J.P. Morgan and Link and all these conferences around my kids' birthdays and avoid them, that's fine. But they don't seem to take my personal agenda into account.
Yeah, the line we have at our house is, it's still going to be our anniversary. It's still going to be our birthday. We're still married if we missed. My wife graduated from MBA on our anniversary, and she was dead because our 10th. And she was just so disappointed. I'm like, honey, we're still married. I'm not leaving, and we'll have our 10th anniversary next week. For some reason, people get locked in on it. It has to be that day.
Right.
Yeah,
no, we don't do that. We usually move it to the weekend.
Yeah, we celebrate. Every year we say we're going to do Thanksgiving on a Thursday. I think it's happened once in 20 years or something. We always end up doing it on Saturday because something comes up and I can't, take the whole afternoon off. So, but that's, I think if you just if you have that understanding that what matters is is the gesture and what matters is making it happen when it can happen. I think.
I gotta ask you, who's the guy behind you?
That's our dog.
That's Jed, the dog. You just heard the front doorbell ring. So
is that right?
Somebody else is going to have to answer it. So, but Jed is part of a big part of our life here, and he's my companion for lots of walks.
Is that right?
So making sure that we get him walked and get me calmed down every day a couple times.
There's something about dogs that give you a certain level of continuity in a family, because no matter what, whether you had a great trip, bad trip, the kids didn't behave, Marta had her own issues, the dog still is thrilled to see everybody. Like there's zero filter there. He's just like, hey, it's great, you're here.
If you're gone for a day or a week, he has the same level of excitement when you come.
With Dad, not with me.
No?
Which is a sore point. I'm the one who feeds him.
I was going to say, you might want to rethink that. I don't mean to tell you how to live, Jed, but you might want to give that some thought.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten that straight yet, but but most days he spends his day, if I'm here, under my desk, keep him warm. So he's a good partner.
From the kids' standpoint, Max is getting old enough now to start thinking about university and maybe even careers. Do you see any of the healthcare rubbing off on them? Do you encourage them to go that route? Or because sometimes people want to be just like their family or their parents rather on what they do. Or do they steer away because they're like, all right, Dad does that, I don't want to be in that world, I'd rather forge my own trail?
We haven't in any way, I think, tried to encourage them one way or another with that. I mean, I think it's they're well aware of what I do. I mean, I think first of all, encouragement of our teenage daughter would be the I should tell her not to do it, and she might be interested in a med tech career.
Right.
I think it's a normal phase that she's in, right? But Max has always been interested in science and engineering, and I think that's independently what he's wanted to do, and I think that's probably what he'll pursue as a university degree, whether it's medtech or not. But I think he's gotten some exposure to it and likes it. But I haven't tried to kind of direct him anyway. I came at medtech from a very different background. I have a liberal arts background in English literature and kind of international relations, foreign policy background, which is totally bizarre for what I do for a living now for the past 20 years. But so yeah, I mean, it's hard to say where you're going to end up, but I think medtech would be a fantastic place for him to be, and the same for Ella and Taya. I mean, they just have to kind of get there.
I mean, look, of all the industries there are, what could be more important than someone's health, or the health member of their family? It's you can always wait to get the next phone or wait to get the next home or something from the grocery store, but your health is so personal. So, Marta, if you don't mind me asking, you're extremely well educated. You obviously could do whatever you want from a career standpoint. Have you considered going back and after the kids get older to work? I mean,
well, I did for a while, and with Dan's traveling schedule, it just was it was a nightmare. So I gave up, and now I started doing photography. So I'm
Really?
quite busy with that right now, and we'll see. Eventually, if I find something interesting, I don't say no, but it's not something that I'm focusing right now on. I'm trying to get them out of the house, and once they're out of the house, then we'll focus on something else.
It's a bit of a conundrum. I mean, she's the smarter and the more talented one of the bunch. I mean, she speaks 5 languages fluently, and I can barely manage to speak English. So, it just so happens that I have ended up, with a prioritized career. But Marta is she continues to explore new things, and
I have lots of things I like to do. So I'm not,
you're a bit of a Renaissance person. That's the way you come across to me. That's why I asked the question. I mean, there's just something very interesting about you. I know a little about Croatia. Unfortunately, it's one of the few countries in Europe I haven't been to, and the pictures you guys send constantly make me think about it. Every time I put the phone down from Instagram, I'm like, man, I gotta go.
You gotta come there.
You're one of the only people I actually have. I keep my Instagram totally private, so you're one of the few. I think there are only 3 or 4 people I know from business who actually see.
Oh, is that right?
See that stuff, yeah. Because I keep my worlds as separate as possible. But yeah, I mean, one of the lovely things about the life we've had is certainly the trips we've taken, and the what we've been able to do and see, and so that's been, Marta organizes the hell out of those things.
So let me pick up on that. What do you do as far as combining work and family type trips? Do you do that, or because you said you pick one bag up and drop the other? Do you separate the two? Because I know I go through that conversation with my wife all the time.
Yeah, we've combined a fair number of things at different times. I mean, I think the best one was we went to the U.S. a couple years ago for a fair amount of the summer, and we structured it so that we could. I think Marta and the kids managed to visit 11 or 12 national parks.
Wow.
And we were kind of rented a Suburban, and we're driving around and camping. And I was kind of stepping in and out of the trip to visit various conferences that were taking place or to meet with the team. And so, I think I was there for about a third of it, or I know about half of the trip. But the kids got to see a ton of America. They still talk about it. All the beautiful parts out west. The Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and Zion and I was able to be with the U.S. team, our U.S. team, for a lot of the summer, and it's pretty easy to they drop me off at the airport, and I fly to the meetings, and then they pick me up at another airport. I mean, it's doable, And so that's kind of indicative of how we've managed things, right? At different times. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It probably, and this is just my assumption, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing it builds fairly resilient, independent kids who manage to take care of their own schoolwork and get their act together and get up in the morning. And March, I'm sure you may not agree totally with that. They probably need a good swift kick every now and again, but I mean, I would think that there's part of that.
I actually think they are amazingly, independent. I mean, we've seen through Corona, because they had a lot of online classes, a lot of, depending on the age of the kids, the teachers would give them a weekly, schedule and things, but they wouldn't have online classes, very few. And from the beginning, they all did it all well. And I said to them, I said, look, you guys can organize your schedule and your work the way you want, but it has to be done. If I hear from the teachers that you're slacking off and not doing the work, then we'll have a different discussion. But I'm not here to be behind you and making sure every single step that you've done, and check all the boxes. And it worked really well. And they've done that since they were small. I mean, we've always raised them to be quite independent and learn to, with 3 small kids and me alone, it was very important, even when Max was 2 years old, that he could put his shoes on and his jacket on and get out of the house without me being there, trying to tie his shoes and do everything for him.
Now that they're older, do they have a grasp of how well educated both of you are and how Dan, I don't want to embarrass you, but how successful you are? Not from a monetary standpoint, from a responsibility. Like, do they grasp that, or that's irrelevant to them? They're not trying to chase that.
No, they take the opportunity to educate me all the time. I think it's a blessing and a curse to have bright kids and bright kids with strong personalities, right? They give it as well as they take it, right? But I think it's not so far off from like leadership and management, right? There's always this context of command, right? I can tell them stuff to do. Marta can tell them what to do, but ultimately, you'd like to encourage them to take responsibility for it. And hopefully, if you have hired the right people, or you're lucky enough to have kids that can do it, they can self-motivate, and they can be as creative and more creative and productive than with us standing over top of them all the time. So
seems to be working. I would say stick with it.
Yeah, I think what is important is that we've tried to keep them very grounded. Yep. And that's certainly Switzerland's they've had a lot of privilege, a lot of travel, a lot of privilege, and growing up in comfortable circumstances, and we've tried to make it clear what's important and what's not, and certainly, focus more on the finding what's important to you in your life than driving to towards some sort of like, financial or how would you say, prestige aspect to life.
I find that my kids are 16 and 13, and the things that they take from me and my wife are things that I've never told them. They're just watching me, and they see how I handle a certain situation. And I would say when they're around, the vast majority of the time, I try to behave properly. The 1 or 2 times that I didn't, they noted it. And, and I'm like, okay, so you guys are paying attention. And I said, yeah. So I guess the last thing I would ask you is, what do they do or say that you guys do or say?
No, I don't know. That's a good question. They're each very individual. I mean, they are very different personalities. So it's hard to characterize them as copying us, because at least I see them as so distinct in their styles and personalities. I think you're right. They do imprint on you, and or you imprint on them, and they're watching all the time, right? Which again, I think is a little bit like work and
yep. It certainly is.
as well, right? So, very little of our communication as humans is the words we say, right? So, and they're like that, right? They're watching all the time. They're watching how Marta and I communicate with each other.
Absolutely. I mean, that is an enormous box to check. I know my daughter, she gets older, I'm like, look, this is kind of how someone should treat their spouse. And so I would prefer you look towards someone who's listens and is kind and includes and talks with as opposed to talks to your spouse. And so I'm hoping I'm setting a good example. I mean, knowing you long enough as I do, Dan, I'm sure that that's the case at your house.
I think we can only try, right?
Yeah.
We don't. Any of us have a good sense of whether we've been successful, but we can try. So.
Yeah, no, you find out kind of quick if you're not doing so well. I mean, most people will let you know, that's for sure. Well, look, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you guys coming on. Marta, you've been a very interesting perspective. Thanks so much for participating. Dan, always a pleasure. So everybody, thank you from the family business, where family's what binds us. Take care, Roses.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.